This week on the show, we have American brain coach and entrepreneur, Jim Kwik. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for watching. This show is all about giving you insights and showcasing brands that help you to live your best life and give you confidence. As always, I want to kickstart your morning with some motivational advice to help you to feel inspired and energized to start your day. Today, I want to talk about the importance of understanding this concept. Raise your standards, change your life. The reality is the quality of our lives roots in the standards we have for ourselves. When we have high standards for ourselves, we set a baseline of what we will and will not accept. We set boundaries for ourselves that reflect our self-love. For example, when we have high standards for ourselves, we attract other people who see themselves as high-value individuals. Having standards is a sign of self-love because it is only when we love ourselves that we are able to see our inherent value and are able to raise the bar in every area of our lives. As Greg Anderson quotes, "Let us be about setting high standards in life, love, creativity, and wisdom." If our expectations in these areas are low, we are not likely to experience wellness. Setting high standards makes every day and every decade worth looking forward to. Stay tuned. Coming up after the break, what's the average percentage that most people use their brains? Because I know that Albert Einstein used more than 10% and he was considered a genius, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's different thoughts about this. That what we talk about in Limitless are lies, LIE, and it stands for a limited idea entertained. A limited idea, because everything for me is like an acronym, kind of little shortcut that would just remind you of like what the lesson is. Mm-hmm. But I would say the 10% is actually a myth, that we actually use 100% of our brain, just like we actually use 100% of our body, right? If you're hiking a hill, we're all using all of our body. It's just some people use their bodies, differently. They're more well trained or more fit, if you will. And so, our goal is to get people mentally fit. I always wear shirts like a brain on my shirt, and photos. I'm always pointing to my brain, just as a reminder that what you see, you take care of. And you see your skin or your car, your clothes, you take care of it because it's in your constant awareness. But our brains aren't. Right. And so the truth is the idea that we use 10% of our brain, it was a common belief system. But now neuroscience says virtually we use all parts of our brain. And what's exciting we've learned more about the human brain in the past 20 years than the previous 2,000 years combined. What we found is we're grossly underestimating our own capabilities.
Wardrobe provided by Le Chateau. Next up on the show, we have American brain coach, entrepreneur, and New York Times bestselling author of the book Limitless, Jim Kwik. Jim is a world-leading expert in speed reading, memory improvement, brain performance, and accelerated learning. Jim, thank you so much for being on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone who's tuning in.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. I was just telling you that I'm such a big fan of your work, so it's really exciting to chat with you. But before we get into your success and you being a world-leading expert in brain performance, as well as a New York Times bestselling author, I want to take it back to the beginning. I know that you had a brain injury as a kid that kind of started you on this journey. So tell us what happened. Sure.
Like many people, my inspiration was my desperation.
Yeah.
When people see me speak at conferences, I say if there's time, I'll do a demonstration. We'll pass around a microphone in an audience, and maybe 50, 60, 80 people will introduce themselves, and I'll remember all their names. Or they'll challenge me to memorize a 100-digit number or 100 random words, and I'll remember them forwards and backwards. And I always tell people I don't do this to impress you. I do to express to you what's possible, because the truth is each and every one of you could do that and a lot more, regardless of your age, your background, your education level, your gender, history, IQ. It's just we weren't taught. And the reason I know it's possible is because I had very severe learning difficulties up to age 18. And when I was 5 years old, I was in kindergarten class, and I took a really bad fall, had a traumatic brain injury, rushed to the hospital, was knocked unconscious, and where it really showed up was in learning. Mm-hmm. And if your viewers have challenges with focus or information overload or forgetfulness, I struggled every day. I had migraines every day. I had poor focus, poor memory. It took me 3 years, 3.5 years just to learn how to read like the other kids. So that really was an attack on my self-esteem. I had very low self-esteem, self-confidence, a lot of self-doubt because I just didn't know the answer. It's very embarrassing. When I was 9 years old, I was being teased by the rest of the class because I just didn't understand the lessons, and the teacher would have to repeat herself over and over again. And they called me slow, even though my last name was Kwik. And a teacher came to my defense. She pointed to me and said, "Leave that kid alone. That's the boy with the broken brain." And that label kind of became my limit. So every time I did badly in school or wasn't picked for sports or whatever, I would always say, "Oh, because I have the broken brain." And so, the story ends up nice. But I did struggle every single day. My two biggest challenges were learning and public speaking. I had the worst fear of public speaking because I never knew the answer. I was the dumbest one in class, and life has a sense of humor because what do I do for a living? I public speak on this thing called learning. But just a reminder that with challenge comes change. That with struggles we get stronger.
And through that, you went on a mission to help others enhance their brain performance. So tell us about that mission and why it's so important for you.
Well, I just know what it's like nowadays, especially with our devices, where we're all drowning in information. You go out and buy a book, and it sits on your shelf unread. It becomes shelf help, not self help, right? You forget simple things like where you put your keys, or something larger like your car.
Yeah.
You see the people out in the parking lots using their car alarms like GPS, trying to figure out where they parked that day. Or we forgot what we just read, or we forgot what we just heard. I believe two of the most costly words in our life are "I forgot." I forgot to do it. I forgot to go to that appointment. I forgot that meeting. I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot that person's name. And on the other side, if knowledge is power, then learning is our superpower. And the reason it's a mission is because I believe our number one wealth building, gift that we have is between our ears, called our brain. It just doesn't come in an owner's manual. It's not very user friendly. And so that's why I wrote Limitless, to be a user manual for your brain, right? Every piece of technology comes with some kind of instructions. But when I learned these techniques when I was about 18 years old, and I'm in my 50s now, so this is 30 plus years ago that I've been coaching, I couldn't help but help other people. I felt a moral obligation, because shame on me if other people are struggling with their learning, and I didn't help them. And one of my very first students I tutored, she was a college freshman, and she read 30 books in 30 days. Can you imagine that?
That's
Can you imagine
incredible.
going online, buying 30 books, and not skim or scan, really read them?
Wow.
And I wanted to find out not how. I taught her how to read faster and how to understand it better. And I wanted to know why. Like, what was her motivation? And I found out her mother was dying of terminal cancer.
Oh, wow.
And the doctors gave her mother only 60 days, 2 months to live. And the books she was reading were books to save her mom's life. And I wish her luck, prayers. I don't hear from her for half a year, and one day I get a call and she's crying profusely. And when she stops, I get a little choked up thinking about it. I find out they're tears of joy, that her mother not only survived, but is really getting better. The doctors don't know how or why. The doctors are calling it a miracle. But her mother attributed 100% to the great advice she got from her daughter, who learned it from all these books. And that's when I realized if knowledge is power, then learning is our superpower. And the second thing I discovered was my mission. Because your brain controls everything you do. It's the key to your learning, decision-making, relationships, your contributions to the world, yet no one hands us, an instructor guide. So my mission is to create, that blueprint to empower people to unleash their brain's full potential so they can live their most limitless lives.
Speaking about Limitless, I know that you have a best-selling book called Limitless. So talk about the book and what people can learn from it.
Yeah, so I think, if people see pictures of me on social media, if we're connected there with Oprah or Elon or whoever, people always want to know how we bonded. And I'll tell you, we bonded over books, right? You read to succeed. If somebody has decades of experience, they put into a book, and you can sit down and read that book in a few days. You can download decades into days, and that's the greatest shortcut. Limitless is deeply personal to me. It's a book I wish I had when I was struggling and I felt stuck in life. It's a guide to unlocking your mental potential that is a genius for every single one of us. And my hope is that this book will provide a very proven step-by-step blueprint to help anyone break free of just focus issues, memory issues, mental fatigue, and really kind of free themselves of limitations to achieve extraordinary results.
I don't think people really understand how important our brain is, and that, as you said, our brain dictates our whole life and our experience in the world, right? How we feel,
Yeah.
how we think, our perception. So obviously the big question is, what are some techniques that you teach that can help people optimize their brain performance?
Yeah, so I would remind people first take care of your brain, right? There's two parts to improving your performance. There's the hardware and the software. So the software is what we have in our books, our podcasts, how to remember names, how to learn another language, how to read faster, in our courses and such. But you also have to take care of the hardware. So I think that's a good place to start. Something easy that everyone could do, and just a simple acronym, is to take your meds, and it's an acronym. The M, not pharmaceutical, but M is meditate. We hear a lot about it, but I think it's important to disconnect, to reconnect. It reduces stress. Chronic stress has been shown to shrink our brains. It also allows us to, mentally energize and to consolidate information. The E in meds is exercise. And I just want to remind you that as your body moves, your brain grooves. When you move your body, you exercise, you create dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. These neurotransmitters are so important for your cognitive health and performance. Also, you create something when you exercise called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factors. And what is it? It's like fertilizer for your brain, for neuroplasticity. And I don't just mean going to the gym 3 times a week or a Pilates class. I mean moving throughout the day. They say sitting is the new smoking. And I just want to remind everyone to take a brain break, a handful of times a day, just to move your body. It'll help you in so many different ways. And then the D in meds is diet. What you eat matters, especially for your gray matter. There's a whole chapter in the book on neuronutrition. Your brain is only 2% of your body mass, but it requires 20% of nutrients. And some of those nutrients are different than the rest of your body. So some of my favorite brain foods, and everyone's a little different, right? You should talk to your doctor, your nutritionist, to find something that works for you. You might be allergic to some of these things. Avocados are wonderful, monounsaturated fat. The blueberries, I like to call them brain berries, wonderful snack, very nutrient protective, neuroprotective. Also, broccoli. There's something active ingredient in there called sulforaphane, which is really good for your cognitive health. Olive oil is a wonderful food for your brain. If your diet allows eggs, the choline in eggs leads to acetylcholine, which is very important for your cognitive health. Green leafy vegetables like kale, spinach, fatty fishes like sardines or salmon, maybe get some flax for your omega-3s. So these are just some of the things you could incorporate for diet. And finally, the S in meds is just make sure you prioritize your sleep.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a bad night's sleep and your brain's just not working the next day? You get easily distracted. You can't remember anything. You have no energy. Can't solve problems or make good decisions. And so when you sleep, you consolidate short to long-term memory, which is so very important. So you have a long-term memory issues, you might want to get a sleep study. It's also when you sleep, the sewage system in your brain kicks in, and you clean out the beta amyloid plaque that can lead to brain aging challenges like dementia. We donated all the proceeds from Limitless to charities to build schools around the world for children in Ghana, Guatemala, Kenya, and also Alzheimer's research in memory of my grandmother, who I lost when I was 7 years old. And so just very, very passionate about bringing this to more of the world.
Speaking about charities, I did see that Stan Lee, the founder of Marvel, that he wrote a testimonial on your website. Great testimonial. Tell us about, how was it working with him?
Yeah, I get to work with a lot of people in Hollywood. Maybe the actors want to speed read scripts or focus on camera or memorize their lines. Stan was a mentor for me for many years. And I would say a simple lesson, like one day he and somebody else that I knew wanted to meet each other. So I arranged, for him to come to dinner with us. And it was Richard Branson and Stan Lee. Oh, wow. And we're in the car, and I I was so nervous. This was years and years ago. But I wanted to ask this question. And I asked him, got up the nerve. I said, Stan, you created all the amazing superheroes. Who's your favorite? And he says, Iron Man. And he says, Jim, who's your favorite? And if you saw this on social media, he had a tie with Spider-Man on it. So I say, Spider-Man. And without a pause, he goes in his iconic voice, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And it's something just now, maybe because I hit my head too many times, I tend to reverse things sometimes when I read or when I hear them, and I heard something different. I was like, you're right, Stan, with great power comes great responsibility. And the opposite is also true. With great, responsibility, we have great power. When we take, responsibility for something, we have great power to make things better. And so that's just a reminder. But there's so many things I learned from Stan in terms of the power of storytelling. I'm passionate about comic books because I mentioned I couldn't read as a child. I taught myself how to read by reading comic books late at night when my family thought I was sleeping. I'd be underneath the covers with my flashlight. Just something about the pictures brought the words to life, and also a reminder that superheroes, and I think there's a superhero in all of us. I know it's kind of like kumbaya, but I would say that just not just having superpowers make you a superhero. We all have superpowers. We have a trade, we have a skill, we have a strength somewhere, a talent. But that doesn't make you a superhero. It's when you use your power for purpose, and superheroes offer hope and they offer help. And even I modeled the Limitless book. You open it up and I show you the stages of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And we take people where you are the main character, you are the superhero of your own mind. And we could redraw the borders and boundaries of what's possible.
I love that. And speaking about superpowers, I'm curious, what's the average percentage that most people use their brains? Because I know that Albert Einstein used more than 10% and he was considered a genius, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's different thoughts about this. That what we talk about in Limitless are lies, LIE, and it stands for a limited idea entertained. Limited idea, because everything for me is like an acronym, kind of little shortcut that would just remind you of like what the lesson is. But I would say the 10% is actually a myth, that we actually use 100% of our brain, just like we actually use 100% of our body, right? If you're hiking a hill, we're all using all of our body. It's just some people use their bodies differently. They're more well trained or more fit, if you will. And so, our goal is to get people mentally fit. I always wear shirts like a brain on my shirt, and photos. I'm always pointing to my brain, just as a reminder that what you see, you take care of. And you see your skin or your car, your clothes, you take care of it because it's in your constant awareness. But our brains aren't. Right. And so the truth is, the idea that we use 10% of our brain, it was a common belief system. But now neuroscience says virtually we use all parts of our brain. And what's exciting we've learned more about the human brain in the past 20 years than the previous 2,000 years combined. What we found is we're grossly underestimating our own capabilities. With the science of neuroplasticity, our brain's ability to make new connections to the day we die. And how do you create plasticity? Through two things, novelty and nutrition. Just like if you want to grow your physical muscles, you give it novelty, you give it exercise, you work it out, you give it stimulus, and then you feed that muscle for it to grow. But it's we use all of it, and the idea here is how can we just make it more fit and healthy.
What's something that you use to kind of switch your mindset? I know for me, I always remind myself that it's my reality, so I'm in charge. And just that little shift in my brain really helps me to take control of my life and go from being a victim to feeling really powerful, right? Like when you feel powerful, then you make better decisions. So for me, it's just reminding myself, as you said, the superhero of your own reality, right? We're the director, producer of our own lives, and we're in control. So what's something that you do? I'm curious.
Yeah, I want everyone just imagine your brain is like this incredible supercomputer, and your self-talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering names, you won't remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your computer not to. At these same events where I'm doing these demonstrations and I'm teaching, people invariably pull me aside in private and say, Jim, I'm so glad you're here as a memory coach. I'm just too old, or I'm not smart enough. I'm kind of dumb, or I have a horrible memory. And I always say the same thing. I say, stop. And I put my hand up. I say, stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for limitations, you get to keep them. They're yours, right? If people truly understood how powerful their mind is, they wouldn't say or think something they didn't want to be true. And that's not to say you have a negative thought and it ruins your life any more than if you just ate a donut will ruin your life. But if you ate 30 donuts a day, every single day, there would be a consequence. So if you find yourself having a negative thought or belief, find like, I don't have a great memory, you could just add a little word like yet at the end, right? Catch yourself. I don't have a great memory yet. And it just opens up the possibility and more of the potential.
And I want to talk about your podcast. You have the #1 brain performance podcast. Let's talk about some of the guests that you have.
Yeah, we have a podcast. It's short form. It's called Kwik Brain. You can just search my name in any podcast app. It's 15 to 20 minutes max, because I know how busy people are. So it's designed to give listeners bite-sized, actionable tools they can immediately apply to enhance their mental performance. So whether you're a student, you're an entrepreneur, a parent, lifelong learner, there's something really for everyone. And my goal is to bring in the top experts in the world. We've done over 400 episodes. Closing in on 100 million downloads. We've had everyone from Dr. Mark Hyman to Jay Shetty to some amazing individuals in the area of mindset, learning, memory, brain health, sleep experts, and so we really cover the gambit on how your brain could really help you win the day. And I feel like it's so popular because it's a quick tips format. My goal is to make learning fun, engaging, something people will look forward to. And I think that's another reason it resonates people, because I emphasize action. I think another lie is that knowledge by itself is power. I think it's potential power, but it only becomes power when we apply it. So at the end, every episode, we give people a solid takeaway, and we have a community, a private Facebook group of a couple 100,000 people where we have accountability. And so, I really believe there's a version of ourselves that's patiently waiting. And the goal is we just show up and we're learning, and until we're introduced, to that special person.
Sometimes it's just that one little thing that you hear that can totally change your mindset, right? You hear a podcast, you hear one little piece of information that completely changes your perception. So I think that's amazing. And, Jim, I created my platform to inspire, to uplift, and really to showcase that anything is possible by showcasing stories like yours. So for anyone that's watching that's going through a hard time, maybe they need that, shift in their mindset to really boost them out of a difficult time. What would you say to inspire and uplift them?
Well, what a beautiful mission that you have.
Thank you.
I feel like inspiring others to see that anything is possible with a dream and a vision is really one of the most powerful gifts that we could offer the world. So for anyone going through like kind of a low period, the way forward always begins, I feel like in our mind. While you can't always control your circumstances, you can control, how you think and what you're going to do. And you have to control the controllables, right? And then the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing. Like even this something simple everybody could do to regain their focus and their locus of control, going back to, with great responsibility comes great power, because I think the most important thing to be responsible for is our own mind, is we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. And a lot of those thoughts come in the form of questions. And there's one question that we ask ourselves more than any other question. And I just feel like it's your dominant question. And that question determines it shines a spotlight, because our brains primarily they act like deletion devices. We're trying to keep information out because there's a billion things we could be paying attention to. So what we pay attention to are things that are important to us that we have questions about. So for example, we have an exercise in the book, and I would walk a friend through it, and her dominant question that she asks all the time, whether she knows it or not, is, how do I get people to like me? And wow, right? You don't know anything about her, what she looks like, her ethnicities, how old she is, where she lives, what she does for a living, but you know a lot about her life, right? If somebody's obsessed with asking themselves, how do I get this person to like me? How would you describe like their personality? They would be
Yeah.
more shy. They'd be people take advantage of them. Their personality might change depending on who they spend time with, right? Because they're a people pleaser, a sycophant, if you will. And you only know one question. You know all this about this person, and you only know one question. So my question for everyone here is, what's your dominant question? What's the question you ask yourself hundreds of times a day, probably hundreds more unconsciously? Like, for example, for me growing up with a broken brain is, how do I become invisible? Because I never knew the answer. So I would always sit all the way in the back so no one would see me and I wouldn't be bullied or called on, or I'd sit behind the tall kid in class. I would always be shrinking down. That was my dominant question. And later on, when I went through so much pain and I felt like I was broken, I asked, oh, how do I fix myself? Right? And then that evolved to, how do I make this better? So when we choose the questions, I think questions really are the answer. Even if we don't, when we're reading something, have you ever read something, got to the end and just forgot what you just read?
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe if we ask more questions about what we're reading, then it'd be like, oh, there's an answer, there's an answer, there's an answer. So I feel like a good takeaway is like being conscious of the questions we ask. Like if you're overloaded, you could ask yourself, what is the tiniest action I could take right now that will give me progress towards my goal, right? Or what's the best use of this moment? You know, if you want to take knowledge and turn it into more power, you could ask yourself while you're listening to this conversation, how can I use this? Or when will I use this? I think our number one productivity performance tool that we have is our calendar, you know, and we schedule our doctor's appointments or parent teacher meetings or work Zooms, whatever, but are we scheduling our implementation of what we're learning? You know, I think I have a rule where if every hour I spend learning something, reading something, listening to a podcast, I want to dedicate an equal hour applying it. Because the truth is, if somebody goes out and reads a book and doesn't use any of it, their life is no better off than the person who's illiterate and couldn't read the book to begin with.
I love that. Asking yourself better questions. I think so many people are on autopilot because, you know, just being scrolling all the time and just, you know, our thoughts are repetitive, right? So we keep thinking the same thoughts, and until we change that and we start thinking differently, we stay in the same place, right? So I like that, asking better questions, and also, I guess, having thoughts that are more empowering, right? If we're recycling the same thoughts, it might as well be thoughts that are empowering and believing we can do things. We can be anything we want, to be honest. As you said, like your book, we could be limitless, and we are limitless. So
I totally believe that. And Limitless is not about being perfect. Limitless is about advancing and progressing beyond what we currently believe is possible. And so, you know, I think a lot of people, they shrink what's possible to fit this certain, you know, to fit the current situation, you know, to fit their minds. When instead of shrinking your dreams to fit your mind, all that's possible to fit our minds, maybe we could expand our minds to fit all that's really possible.
And for our viewers that want to get coached by you, where can they do so?
So we have online programs. It's the most popular way. We have students in every country in the world. It's the largest platform for brain. If you want a better brain and you want to learn faster, read faster, focus better, improve your memory, it's all there for all ages and stages. You could just go to kwikbrain.com. That's KWIK brain.com. We have a big conference for about 5,000 people in Los Angeles in March. So if you're honored, follow us on social media. We'll announce the details there shortly. And our podcast, you know, our YouTube, we have 1.7 million people and subscribe on YouTube, where we put, you know, more of extended versions and, you know, video of me on stage teaching. And, you know, I'm not hard to find online. You know, if people want to go support Limitless, you know, again, we donate the proceeds to a worthy cause. So not only do you get your education and better brain, but there will be, you know, more people who have better brains and educated because of, you know, I think you learn to earn to return, right? But it's hard, right? You know, change is hard and growth can be scary, but nothing is as hard and scary as being stuck somewhere that you don't belong, right? When I was told I was limited when I was, you know, only 9 years old, you know, that doesn't have to be like your prognosis, you know, or you take a test when you're 8 and that's your potential when you're 88. Your brain is not fixed like your shoe size. And through practice, nutrition, lifestyle, learning, and reading, we could upgrade our brain and upgrade our life.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about our brains is that we can always change our thoughts, right? And then change our reality by just changing how we think. And we can do that at any time. It's always available to us.
Right. And you're an example of that, right? Like at one point this, this show was a thought in your mind, right? And you took the invisible and you made it visible. Because I feel like that's what the world needs. I think the future belongs to the creators. That, if you're watching this right now, I'm going to remind you that you are a thermostat and you're not a thermometer. Like if you think about a thermometer, the only function of a thermometer on the wall is it just reacts to the environment. Whatever the environment is, it reacts. But a thermostat doesn't do that. Like sometimes as human beings, we react to politics, we react to how people treat us, to the weather, to whatever. But the people who are truly happy, right, and more fulfilled, they don't react, right? A thermostat doesn't react to the environment. It gauges it. It's following what's going on with the world, in their world. But what does it do? It sets a temperature, a new temperature, or a standard, a vision, a dream, a goal, right? And then the environment reacts to you, right? And maybe it starts in the mind, because it's hard to create a negative mind can't create a positive life. Right. It would just because as you mentioned, those thoughts become real things. And I just feel like, now's the time to remember that we are the pilot of our minds. We're not the passengers. And then we could do so much more. And we're writing our story every single day. And we can't compare, our chapter 2 to someone's chapter, 24. That wouldn't be quite fair. Because especially on social media, right? There's not only digital deluge and digital distraction, digital dementia, but there's also digital depression where people are just like scrolling all the time and they're doom scrolling and seeing the highlight trailer of everyone else's life. And I just want to remind everyone that everyone is fighting a battle that nobody sees. And that's why kindness now more than ever is so very important. One kind gesture or words or anything, it just ripples out like that butterfly effect. And I feel like that there's a world that exists solely because you're in it, not because you bought something or taught something or created something. It's just you matter and you always will. And this world exists because, we're all in it together. If someone's going to ask, how do you become limitless in a limited world? We do it together.
Yeah. Well, I truly believe in your message about everyone having the superhero within. I think it's just a matter of finding it and believing that it's possible. And once you believe it, you get to experience that in your reality. So I love everything you're doing. Jim, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's really an honor because I'm such a big fan of your work. So it's really an honor to have you on the show and chat with you. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I challenge everyone to do one quick thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can maybe they take a quick screenshot? I'll point to my brain, but take a quick screenshot and just tag us both when you post it, and just share one thing you're going to do for a better brain. We talked about meditation, maybe moving more. Maybe trying some of those brain foods, maybe prioritizing your sleep, whatever. Right. And I would just monitoring your thoughts a little bit more, coming up with your dominant question, because when we share it, when we teach it, we get to learn it twice. One of the best ways of learning something is to teach it to somebody else. It takes advantage of something called the explanation effect. So you could screen capture this, post it so we get to see it. I'll repost some of them, and then we'll gift a bunch of copies randomly to people of our book just as a thank you. But if you don't tag us, we won't see it. So
I think that's a great challenge. Yep. We're going to put the information below. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, everyone.
The Darriel Roy Show is available on Roku, iHeartRadio, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple Podcasts.